So our next speaker is Mitchell Kirsch, from Sustainability Project Officer from Woollahra Council. Mitchell has a Bachelor of Environmental Earth Science and 5 years experience in sustainability, project management and communications. As the Sustainability Project Officer at Woollahra Council, he is responsible for developing, delivering and reporting on energy, water and emissions reduction projects. He has a particular passion for engaging local community members, and he'll be talking about the Apartment Sustainability and Energy Savings Program, which is one of his favourite projects to work on. So please welcome Mitchell. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I don't know about you, I'm absolutely buzzing. It's been a great couple sessions. I've considered briefly moving to Newcastle or Lake Mac just to get involved with community programs. Very exciting. As I mentioned, yeah, Mitchell Kirsch from Woollahra Council. I'm here to present on our program. Tough to follow up with all the acts that have already progressed, but I'm excited to show this is more focused on apartment buildings specifically. Woollahra, translated in the Jurg language, is a camp, lookout, or meeting ground. So in the spirit of the meeting ground that we're on, acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands in which we meet today, Burmadigal clan of the Jurg Nation, and of the lands in which I work, the Gadigal. Thank you. The Gadigal and Birrabirragal people of the Eora Nation. And also hello to everyone online. Where's my camera? On behalf of Woollahra Council, acknowledge Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people attending today, pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. A little bit about our LGA. It's about 12 square kilometers. I think Lake Mac was, what, 600 something? So yeah, a little bit smaller. We're in Sydney's eastern suburbs. We're very much largely residential. We do have some commercial areas, some really beautiful parklands, and a military reserve up in Watsons Bay. Why apartments specifically rather than a full-on community electrification program? Well, about 60% almost of residents reside in apartments. This is expected to increase quite drastically over time. I'm sure you might have heard of a particular train station in the news recently. So yes, lots of dwellings coming into Woollahra. I'm taking no questions on the train station. Let's stick to electrification. But more importantly, apartments account for over 30% of our community greenhouse gas emissions and about 50% of potable water use. So while we are focusing primarily on electrification, there is a bit of water tied into the mix just to focus on that kind of full scope of sustainability. Residents are also generally of a higher socioeconomic status in Woollahra, primarily English speaking. And the demographics skewed more towards kind of parents and home builders in 35s, 45s, or older workers, retirees, and seniors. So two things that I kind of get from that. People do have generally a little more capital to work with when trying to undertake upgrades, but also that they're at an age where they're really interested in trying to reduce bills, trying to be a bit more greener, and are interested to learn a bit more and might have a bit of technical experience in the background to really look into these more and have the time to dedicate towards it. A little bit about our program. There's two main objectives, which is to reduce common area energy usage in participating buildings by about 20%, and also to showcase sustainability projects through case studies that are being implemented locally. And the case studies really help to exemplify what buildings are already doing and what learnings can be shared across the LGA. In terms of selection criteria, when residents apply, we review based on the demonstrated likelihood of implementing energy-saving measures, opportunities for emissions reductions, and the prospect of providing case studies. And the way that we do this is ask a lot of different questions in the registration process about what energy upgrades they've already done in the building, which helps to understand what their maturity is like, but also what they're looking to do. So giving an understanding of what their main aim is. And as we've heard before from the other presentations, it's primarily around cost savings, but there is sometimes that kind of green energy savings, energy efficiency to tap into as well. In regards to the overall offer, this is probably pretty similar to, I think, what Lisa has mentioned before with their assessments. So it's a free in-person sustainability assessment of their apartment block with the program consultants, and myself and one of my colleagues, Michelle Rose, we love to tag along when we can because it's great to really chat to the residents. We're focused on kind of really building that relationship directly with them. Once that assessment's done, they get a report covering the applicable energy and water saving opportunities, including a financial and environmental business case for each. So financial more sits with the residents to understand how much it's going to cost and what are they going to save. But also for us, it's helpful to see what that environmental impact is. They also get a 1-hour webinar to building residents to present that report from the consultants. The consultant presents the report to them. They get a little guidance, and they also can answer any questions, which really helps to understand what the barriers might be with the building. Sometimes there's the stalwart within the building that doesn't really want to do anything, is not open to change. But when they have a discussion and start to understand the barriers and how to resolve them, they can get a bit more on board, which is really helpful. The webinar is also recorded, so they get a copy of it, which they can refer to back. We also allow for about 20 minutes of additional liaison with consultants that's just factored into the cost. And we find this is quite helpful because oftentimes they have remaining questions. So to kind of avoid that scope creep, we like to include that in. And I think it just makes the consultants, us, and the residents a little more comfortable. They don't feel like they're being overbearing by trying to ask more questions. So we find that that's quite helpful for everyone to let them know that they have a little more time to ask, because oftentimes there are some little things that they might want to clarify. Council also includes a little waste element, which I'll touch on a bit later, and also some educational resources similar to a lot of the other examples we've heard from councils, with some educational webinars, some guides, and what's really helpful, which some have already touched on, providing a list of contractors to really get them to that next stage past just getting a report, understanding, going to the quoting process, essentially. How it works, you can see that pretty well. I've split this up into 2 sections, really just to show kind of where people start from in terms of registration and onboarding, and then on to the actual site visits. We've kind of explained this in previous presentations, so I won't spend too much time on it. But we launched the program and promote it through relevant media channels, which includes printed and digital newsletters and also social media. The apartment blocks, they register online through a web form hosted by the consultant. We get those back and review them based on that selection criteria, and then make a selection out of those who've applied. We notify the apartment blocks through email and advise on the next steps. And the main next step is passing a demonstration of commitment resolution, which is a fancy way of saying that they get permission. They give us permission and the consultant to request utility and building data up to 5 years. This really helps to get that access, and it also appoints a designated contact. So for council, it really helps us kind of have that official, they are part of the program, they have signed up officially, and we are able to kind of take them to the next level. The next step is then introducing the consultant officially, and we request building and utility information from, or the consultant requests that. The block then provides all the information, and we schedule a site visit. Moving on to the site visits, we conduct that with council staff. We deliver the reports to the apartment block. They then have enough time to really digest. It's a lot of information, especially when you have multiple different projects. So they can take as much time as they need, because by then we've paid the consultants, so there's no kind of time pressure. I think Lisa mentioned the end of financial year barrier with, you have it for a certain period. So this really helps relieve pressure from everyone once that report's delivered. So they get that Zoom presentation, and then there's an ongoing process where we check in every 3 to 6 months, collect data to evaluate, and develop case studies where we can. In terms of participation, we've had 3 rounds. It started in September 2019, and then that first round went to 2020. There's a second round in March 2021 to February 2023. We had a mix of buildings participate, and those are really kind of trial periods to test the process and the program. Heavily impacted by a global pandemic, which was quite difficult. But still, it was great to get that initial bit. I took over in round 2, so it was quite hard to evaluate when a lot of people moved and a lot of things changed. But still, we got some decent numbers, which is okay. I've also realized I can be way nerdier in my data nerdiness. More surveys, Lisa, I've realized. Great outcome. But yes, definitely can improve kind of what metrics you choose. And then round 3, we started in February 2025, and that's continuing onwards. It did technically end in last financial year due to our budget, but we're still supporting buildings. Again, it's a long process. We didn't really designate specifically by suburb, but I was just wanted to show kind of the range across our different suburbs. And showing in the middle, Darling Point has 9 buildings, which is more than any other suburb, but 194 units, which isn't even as high. So it depends on what kind of size it is. And in terms of building size, we had about 15 small blocks, 11 medium blocks, and 9 large blocks, which designated as over 41 units. In regards to reports, I'll try and move myself. Just going to minimize. There we go. The reports, we partnered with Wattblock on all 3 rounds of the program. In the initial stages, they offered a couple different types. The LED lighting report has kind of dropped off a bit because generally buildings have done an LED lighting upgrade and don't really need a really detailed design for it. A lighting contractor can do that. But the sustainability report was the most common by far. And I'll go through a little bit of the inclusions there in a sec. There was also a solar feasibility study for buildings that wanted to really hone in on solar. We had one in Paddington that was a 120-unit building that were really interested in it. They already did heat pumps and already had done LED lighting. So it was great to really focus and hone in on one specific project rather than a sustainability report because they've already done some initiatives. And I included the EV charging feasibility study. Again, similar approach. No one's really taken that up yet. Woolar is quite progressive in installing public EV chargers in the area. And generally, there's enough around for people to be supported by that. So no one's really gone to that specifically. Just to mention on the costs, again, we partnered with Wattblock for all 3 rounds, but it did depend by report type, size, and who you're going with in terms of the supplier. But generally, they're about $1,400 to $3,000 per report, and we budgeted about $20,000 for each round just to cover the report costs and some consultant time, which also included maybe a kind of launch webinar for residents so they can explain the program and get a better idea. We've already kind of gone through quite a lot of those inclusions there, but I really just wanted to hone in on the Energy Made Easy tariff review, which has already been mentioned is really helpful, and that a more in-depth description of the sustainability opportunities, which cover a wide range of things as part of that report, which is really great. And it also includes 2 to 3 solar and battery options. So it comes with kind of a light option covering a bit of the roof and then a maximized option, also some solar. So residents can really see what they want to go for and whether there's some hesitations to really, maybe they don't have much budget, they want to prioritize capital works. It's helpful to have those options available. And I also just mentioned as well, there's some finance options and then some guidance on the Strata committee resolutions to help pass, as well as some bylaw guidance. And Wattblocks includes that in every report. It's pretty much a copy paste of the slide, but it is really helpful for residents to understand how that governance process works within their building. Oftentimes, there is tricky pathways through it. You have to get a lot of people on board. So it is helpful for them to be aware of how they can really progress that. This is just an example of a sustainability report. It's much more in depth, but just to show that on the top there, summary of top opportunities, which goes through a whole list of them, and then a bit more in detailed view of the a solar and battery option, how it kind of works against the common load, what the payback is, the excess solar that would be exported to the grid. So it gives the residents an understanding of what this looks like and how they can plan for it. And we find this is really helpful. It also includes some design considerations. So for this building in particular, you can see some shading in that photo. So it touches on that and what they need to be careful of. So if they do go out to quote, a contractor can't just quote for it in a super maximized solar system that doesn't actually work very well. So it gives them a bit of confidence in going out to quote. In regards to results, oh, that's fun. My colors have changed. We had 2 trial rounds, as mentioned. It got impacted by COVID, so it was quite difficult for me to really follow it with those buildings. But from what I could get, the main thing that we really love to focus on at Woolar with these programs is that 100% of buildings that participated have sustainability on the agenda. This is the story that we're trying to focus on. The metrics are really great, but what we really want to do is equip residents with the ability to have that report. I think Lisa had mentioned people really cherish that report. They love going back to it, and that's a really great outcome for us. It's great to hear that they can. We even had a building 5 years later that participated in our first round just install a new solar system on their building thanks to that report. So it's a long time coming, but it's great to hear that they are progressing with those opportunities. Again, just for some quick metrics, about 45 grand was spent on buildings that did upgrade, 18 grand in savings. So it's good payback period, about 3 to 4 years based on that. That was a mix of LED upgrades and some solar. Had about an annual energy reduction of 46 megawatts and about 48 annual emissions done. I like that stat about 10-year emissions energy reduction. Thank you, Lacey. Good one there. We also love to hear the qualitative feedback. So it's great to hear that people had a really positive experience with the program. I can definitely add some more survey questions in. Thank you for the help. It's great to learn for everyone on what people are using for metrics, and that kind of feedback is really helpful for us. Our third round's been really great. It's been great to really chat with residents directly. I actually just heard today from Brent from Wattblock that actually 3 buildings are looking at the SOAR grants and the New South Wales federal battery grants. So that's a really great incentive for them, and we find that the program paired quite well with that grant opportunity. 3 other buildings are looking at discussing with their committees on solar and some other projects, and then other buildings are planning for upgrades in the longer term capital works. A really good example of this is when buildings have a roofing upgrade or a waterproofing. As part of the waterproofing, they can ask to include metal support rods for the solar as part of it. And then in a year or 2 or 3, they can then install the solar and the support's already there. They don't have to re-waterproof the rods. So it's just a helpful way to see how they can stage these installations, and they feel a lot more comfortable with it, so don't get caught out in 3 years' time and have to re-waterproof the whole thing. 2 slides on learning insights and improvements. We've touched on quite a few of these, so I won't spend too much time. But as I mentioned, getting sustainability on the agenda or having a list of projects that they can look at is really a great start for them. It equips them with an idea of how much things will cost, how to stage the project, and also the confidence on how to get started. Identifying feasible and unfeasible upgrades are both good outcomes of a program. So if solar is not very feasible for them, that's fine. It's good for them to know that, so that they aren't wondering about how they should be doing it or wasting energy to try and get quotes. They can focus on an LED lighting upgrade or hot water heat pump. So finding that it's unfeasible is really helpful for them. But it also helps to understand where they might need to wait for a grant program or another opportunity. We really focus on not just owners and investors or people on the strata committee, but everyone involved. So renters, it's obvious reducing energy bills, and they might want to have maybe a more green home, but that the cost might be prohibitive, especially with green power. Whereas owners and investors might care about that, but also what that we find really helpful is when we note the property evaluation uplift from the Domain Sustainability and Property 2025 report. Owners and investors are not very interested until we mention that you can get maybe 10, 13% increase in your property value with these upgrades. So that does include a range of upgrades, but they get quite interested and involved when they realize that their unit can increase in value. So we find that that's a really good mention when you're discussing that with strata committees. And also with strata managers, there's the New South Wales strata laws has to consider sustainability at the AGM properly. We find that would be a good incentive for them to really consider it, not just a tick box exercise, but an actual quality report that they can get a lot of lists for this to then consider all these projects. So we find that if we were to do future rounds, we'd probably target that messaging a little bit more around all the people involved, not just the strata committees or residents. And also, as I mentioned, blocks are likely already on their journey. So we've asked them to registration forms what upgrades they're doing. And that helps to give an idea of how we can assess them as part of the selection criteria. Last little bits. We've already heard it, but definitely plan for change. So residents move, committees and strata managers change, and staff turnover. So we learned from our first 2 rounds that you should require 2 to 3 contacts for the registration. Definitely 1 to 2 committee members, and also a strata manager. So they're on board. You have multiple contacts in the building. This is really essential, especially when trying to engage with these people, the residents, because you have multiple points of contact, and it helps to keep that momentum going. And also within council, keep really great internal records, factor that into the resourcing for the project. And update these as well as you can. if you can keep a record of what buildings are interested in, but maybe you don't have the money for, you can update them on grant opportunities. So it kind of becomes sort of a mailing list, which we find is quite helpful. We've already heard this. Sustainability upgrades take a very long time. As I mentioned, in some cases, 5 years. So really ask those questions during the site visits if you're the one attending them, or get the consultant to get that information. I think ZapCat has included that a little bit in their program, which is quite great to see. But you try and get a lot of the info to understand where they're at. Accessing the building utility data was quite difficult for us. You want to see what they've done before and what they've done after. Generally before is fine because they are willing to provide it as part of it. But a couple of years down the line, you're talking to someone different. So it gets quite difficult. So I just mentioned that you might want to consider what metrics you're trying to report on. I really liked the satisfaction ratings versus direct energy reduction. That was quite helpful. And consider that in capacity of your team and the budget that you have. You can also specify consultants' estimations for cost payback and utility savings. That's quite helpful in WAP block reports. So if they do go ahead with a project, at least we have a general understanding of what that impact might be. But definitely understand how they got there and what those numbers are in case anybody asks what those questions about it. And then, as someone's already mentioned, plan ahead for the end of financial year budget. And also plan for heavy project admin. Residents love to chat in your ear when they have it. And I've already helped a resident with a leaning Osgrid pole that has nothing to do with us, but they were keen about it. Traffic going through their area and being super loud, and a tree that they requested to be cut. So I mention this because it is part of a customer experience. You are a touch point for them. So factor that in as part of your resourcing, that people will come and chat to you and want help for other things. And it's a great outcome of the program to help them out with that. Oftentimes it's a flick of an email to the right person and you can get their answers for them. So you're kind of the touch point for them. That is pretty much it. Oh, yes. And one other thing, you can also support residents in other ways. We've heard about some really amazing, incredible programs, but oftentimes the little educational sessions and webinars are really helpful. And we've seen some evidence for that from the other councils. Consultant and third-party guidance on suppliers and contractors is very helpful to residents, and we've seen the effects of that as well, to really get them to that quoting process. And I also mentioned that in one instance last year, 2 years ago now, we had 10 30-minute solar and EV charging advice sessions with a consultant that helped blocks out, and it just got them a little bit more info. So it doesn't have to be a full-on program. It could be something light and easy, and that really gives the backing to do more if there's a lot of interest in those things. We also added a waste element into the third round. So we asked residents what they dealt with in terms of waste, looked at their waste bin area, and then offered them some updated waste signage and FOGO caddy bins. It's nice to give the residents something tangible instead of just a digital report. I hope they think of council when they see that, hopefully not looking at their waste bin specifically, but it is nice to know that they have something available and that we can kind of tie in the waste team onto it as part of a full encompassing sustainability program. That's it. I'm sure there's lots of burning questions, so excited for the panel session. Thanks, Renew, for having me, and really looking forward to hearing all your questions. Thanks.
Cad from Northern Beaches Council. They were all fantastic presentations. I've probably got questions for all of you afterwards, but just focusing on the solar for apartments for strata, which is the hard nut to crack, I think. How do we get to the owner's corps? How do we do it? And does anybody have any insights into whether the government might be extending the solar for apartment residents grant offer that's due to close on the 1st of December?
Good question. I don't know if they're extending it. I hope they are. That would be very nice. Yeah, engaging owners corps is quite difficult. We've really just gone through the residents to kind of get them on board. I do know our neighbor Waverley Council has hosted kind of more specific webinars and engagement sections with owners corps to really get them on board. But yeah, otherwise it's a bit of a tough nut to crack. Anyone else have any advice?
We were also worked with WAP Block when we ran our Solar for Strata program, and in the scoping phase, their advice was I think we have 1,200 strata title properties. Their advice was to shrink that down to a solar target list of about 200, and they look at the key variables. They look at orientation, roof type, size, and energy load. And then, so they were looking for something that would typically have a payback of 5 to 7 years. This is pre solar for apartment residence grants. But then we went out and wrote to those properties and said, congratulations, you're on our solar target list. Here is an offer. And we found that that had really good take up. Sorry? It was really hard. We did the first mail out, care of the secretary. Don't know if sometimes when we don't know who the secretary is. And sometimes in the letterbox, the old fashioned one, you've got number 1 to 20 and then it says manager. But then for the second round, we had a directive to write to every resident in those targeted properties. So that was in COVID, which was a bit tricky because we couldn't do letterbox drop. So we had to kind of muster a massive targeted address list. And we've got a number of properties where there is no 4th floor. There's only a 4th, the 3rd and a 3A, and you have to sort of work around that. Otherwise, it just gets returned to sender. So that's really tricky.